Good evening, everyone. My name is Eunice, and today we're going to talk about the stages of disasters. I recently watched a video called Stages of Disaster. It's dated April 23rd, 2019, and it's available on YouTube. Um, we're going to be using the book called Fundamentals of Crisis Counseling by Geri Miller. And I highly recommend this book because it has a lot of key concepts regarding crisis and disasters. Um, we're all familiar with the disaster, the Hurricane Katrina that struck Louisiana. Um, and mental health was able to learn a lot about disaster counseling. Um, let's start first with the 7 stages of disasters. In 1986, Halpern and Tremonton, 2007, described the 7 stages. The first stages is warning, which is the alarm, where there's first an awareness of the potential disaster. The second one is the threat, the imminent danger time frame. The third one is the impact, when the disaster actually strikes. This is the acute trauma phase. The fourth one is inventory, an examination and categorization of damage done by the disaster. After the disaster strikes, then comes the rescue, where the efforts are organized. Number 6, the remedy, where the relief efforts are present. 7, the recovery, some initial stability occurs. So what does that all mean? It means, for example, here in Houston, when we had Hurricane Harvey, first we were warned by the news media and by the city that a hurricane was going to come. And so they call it disaster preparedness. So we went and got ready for possibly being without electricity, without being water. So, we ran out and got bottled water, canned food, so we could have something for at least a few days in case we were without electricity and the refrigerator wasn't working. That's the warning. And then the threat, of course, is just before the storm. The impact was, of course, when the storm struck. After the storm hits, then there was an inventory. The next day, when it was daylight, we were able to see what everything looked like, who was flooded, what was the damage, how many people were injured. Then the rescue efforts were organized. Then we saw different people volunteering to rescue people off a roof or pull people out of houses, or the city brought in big trucks to pull people out of their homes because the water was too high. Then there is the remedy and recovery, where the relief efforts are present. The recovery, this is where some things try to come back to normal. How does this affect your well-being? Well, first of all, the example that we see most commonly used is Katrina, because we hadn't seen here in the United States a disaster that struck so terribly, so ravaged the Gulf Coast. People lost more than just their homes. They lost their memories. They lost their churches, friends. They lost that sense of stability and security that they were accustomed to. This takes a toll on a person because it's more than just a home. This is their memory. This is their life. The American Red Cross was instrumental in helping with the relief efforts. So we went through the stages. of what the 7 stages of disasters are. But disaster mental health counseling is different from regular counseling. In regular counseling, you know that you can expect to possibly be in an office. You know your client's going to show up at a regular time. And in disaster counseling, you know, you may be thrown into the midst of the crisis where people, their emotions are running high. You have to keep your senses about you. You don't know who you're going to talk to or how long you have to talk to them. You have to make a quick assessment of their needs and the situation. Establishing a rapport with the client, that's very important so that they can open up to you. And being flexible. Countertransference is also something that you would have to fight against. The temptation to be caught up in the intensity of the situation. Like I said, emotions will run high. You have to check your ego at the door because you never know if one day you're going to be in that same situation. Try to work collaboratively with others. Also, you have to remember that you're responsible for the effort and not the outcome. So put forward your best effort. As a mental health disaster provider, you also have to take care of yourself. One of the things you also need to practice with the clients is genuineness, respect, and empathy. Try to establish relationships quickly and provide assistance that's therapeutic, and more importantly, be able to remain calm. In addition to the 7 stages and phases of disaster that I mentioned earlier, there are also 4 time frames describing the period after the disaster. Number 1 is the heroic phase. In this phase, this is where all the efforts come in, all the noble efforts come in to help those who have been impacted. This is where you see the churches coming in, where government comes in to try to help the people. Some of the phases can overlap as well. You may also see the media come in. That's part of the heroic phase. In the honeymoon phase, compassion and relief are expressed to the impacted. Here's where people feel encouraged. Everything will be done. Everything will be all right. This can last months after the storm, and you start to hear heartwarming stories of people being rescued or people finding pictures that they thought were lost, and they have a sense of hope because they can recover their memories when they thought everything was lost. The disillusionment phase. This is an anticlimactic experience where resources and attention are diminished. The magnitude of the recovery hits. Fear or harsh reality sets in. The resources and attention are diminished. The nonprofits may have less money. They may call back their volunteers. The contributions may decrease. You will see a huge increase in suicide attempts. You're going to see despair and depression set in because they think that things will never be the same. The next phase is the reconstruction phase. Let's build a new normal. This phase can last a long time. Structures are being rebuilt. The words provide healing. Knowledge of these phases is helpful to mental health professionals in their assessment. First, the survivors will generally have emotions to match the phase, which then you can use to guide the choice of intervention. Secondly, the knowledge of the phases can assist the disaster mental health counselor educating the community about how reactions to the disaster will generally change over time and about how this is a normal and natural process. So, as a provider, you can find out what you do well in disaster settings and look for opportunity to do those things. Be there for people. Avoid placating or pathologizing people and treat everybody as a unique person. Um, there are 3 stages of treatment. One is acute support. This is to reduce the distress that the client is feeling. In stage 2, intermediate support. Here, the therapeutic relationship is critical and you focus on helping the client with the daily stressors. And stage 3, the ongoing treatment. Here's where the interventions are shaped to fit the individual client and his or her problems. So I hope you found this information helpful, because I did. And I'll have a couple more YouTube links that you can watch regarding Hurricane Harvey. Since we're in Texas, we experienced firsthand the devastation that the hurricane brought, and also the Texas freeze earlier this year in Houston. Thank you.